this will be the last things I made video that I ever make and post on the internet. Today I'm going to show you everything that I have made this summer, including trying it on, showing it moving, and to put it simply, I've graduated. I am a designer. So it's time for me to stop just saying, you know, this is what I sewed, this is what I made. Let me show you everything that I designed and made this summer. I'm gonna go through this in reverse chronological order, sharing everything that I made and the inspiration behind it. So I'm actually gonna get some help trying these on and showing them to you. But first, I just wanted to show you the bathing suit top. I'm not gonna try on the entire bathing suit. It's kind of a vibe even over a t-shirt. I was surprised by how incredibly comfortable it is. I was like, okay, this could be a bra that I would wear all of the time. So something for future ideation. As I was making the bottoms, I could tell in my gut it just wasn't gonna fit. And when it didn't fit, I was not surprised, but I was very disappointed that I went ahead and followed the pattern, even knowing that just proportionally it was not gonna even come close to fitting me. So from here on out, I will make my own patterns, and that's that. Bringing in my helper here to show us how everything's gonna look on. That was something that was a call out last time about people wanting to see things in motion more, and I'm more than happy to make that happen. That sounds great. So we'll just go one at a time. The first thing that we're going to talk about is this crocheted faux leather set inspired by Moschino. I consider this an upcycling project because both of these pieces have already been in my wardrobe. There is an entire video on the making process. The fashion world in general is too gated. I see so many people on the internet struggling with how to have a good relationship with their wardrobe. Should I get rid of fast fashion, unethically made clothing just because they were made that way? No. Is it okay to buy secondhand fast fashion? Absolutely. And really the most sustainable thing you can do is to revive things in your wardrobe. Isn't it so much better for me to have found a way to reinvent these fabulous faux leather pieces rather than having them end up in a landfill? Yes. I love the genesis of the idea behind this dress. My husband and I were watching Sweet Home Alabama. It aged really well, and so did this one sheer dress. And it happened to coincide with an episode on the podcast where we were talking about fabric manipulation. I never tried shearing before, so I decided I would make a dress as a gift to my teenage self who had tried so hard to find this dress out in the world. I remember thinking it was so lovely, and one of my favorite things about it is that it pushes off the shoulder, and because of the ruching, you can scrunch up the sleeves. You have all these options to just kind of futz with it, which I really enjoyed. Making a ruche dress is actually really easy. I just took a big rectangle of fabric and sheared it together and then cut it to fit, and then did something slightly more complicated with the sleeves, which is I did a slash and spread and then gathered it together in order to have the shaping that I wanted with those gorgeous ruffles. I did it as a double layered piece with a mint tulle over a silk linen blend in this gorgeous yellow. It turned out really well. My next make was the happiest of accidents. I was doing a video on tracing a pattern inspired by a vintage jumpsuit that I wore in the middle of the summer. Midway through making the video, I decided to try out some new software that I had. I bought an Apple Pencil, bought an iPad so that I could use Procreate, so I could play around with what a pattern might look like in a design before I actually make it. I was so blown away that we'll actually be doing an episode at the end of September on the podcast about how you can use traditional fashion design tools and ideas such as Procreate and an Apple Pencil. I had this fabric that felt very much like a summer picnic, but when I played around with its placement, I realized that I could almost get a scarf print-like effect by only cutting pieces on these green floral squares. There were so many learnings that I had from that process, and there is a whole video on it. But I really love this jumpsuit. I'm definitely going to borrow this pattern for some jumpsuit makes in the very near future. because I'm starting to create things more as a part of a whole rather than an individual piece, I do have a lot of things that I am having to prototype, test new ideas for. And one of those things is a pair of trousers that I have designed to accompany my scrap yarn quilt-inspired hoodie that I made. I decided to test it out in this fabric that is from reupholstering my couch. These pants were really an experiment. I ended up running out of my primary fabric and having to have a panel of another piece that was left over. And then as I was making them, I was like, I really wanted to test a double waist. So I decided to add a second waist to it because what's better than one waist? Two. But of course, these are not the first things that I've made out of leftover couch material. Don't be surprised if you don't see me while I'm sitting on my couch, crocheting, watching TV, because I perfectly camouflage. There's nothing that I love more than taking an idea and bringing it fully to life. And this crossbody bag, wow, it's my dream piece. I've wanted a bag like this for such a long time. It's crocheted using a raw wool, but then I also installed 2 zippers as well as 2 functioning buckles. I've had requests to turn the crossbody into a pattern. On the fence about that. Let me know if that's something you would want to make. But I also have thought about making them to sell because I think it's a great item and something I could do using some recycled materials. So that might actually be a piece that I produce myself. So let me know if you'd want to either make one or buy one in the comments, and I will take that into consideration. Not everything that I make works out. I decided to do a join as you go pattern for the first granny square sweater that I had ever designed. It was really fun. And then I decided to remake it in a cotton for a summer edition. However, I ended up taking it apart despite how great I thought it looked. It was something that I really did already have in my wardrobe in the form of the original one. And I love the colors of the granny squares so much, I just couldn't leave them in that piece. So I ended up taking it apart. But before I did, I had this idea while I was putting it together of doing some halter neck like piece. And so that's where this came from. This was just an idea that I tossed together. It has a zipper on the back of the neck so that it's really easy to get on and off. It does need to be tightened a little bit on the back because this is just like a raw cotton that is pretty loosely wound. I've learned my lesson. It does stretch out a little bit. So at some point I'll probably tighten up that back, but I've been shocked how much I've worn it. And as you can see with this creative styling, I do plan on continuing to wear it well into the fall season. Coming full circle, when I made my last This Is What I Made video, I had been working on the scrap yarn hoodie. I finished the scrap yarn hoodie. It's my pride and joy. There's a pattern for it. It's going into production. I'd say I couldn't be more excited, except for we're going to be doing a crochet along. We had our first moment of frost the other day here, and I was so excited to put it on because I had designed it with the intention of being that thing that you can just toss on like a hoodie, but it's a sweater, it's warmer. Something that feels like a hug in the morning when you have to let the dogs out and it's just cold and you just don't really want to put anything on, but you can put that on and be stylish and have it use up your excess scrap yarn that's lying around. It's still such a wonderful piece. I do want to tell more stories through the clothing that I'm designing and making, like the scrap yarn hoodie, like that combination of using those traditional quilting shapes, innovative garment design, and have something that is going to be, dare I say, a future heirloom in your wardrobe. So that's where I'm going to be going in the future. That doesn't mean I'm not going to show you behind the scenes inspiration, but just know it's going to be changing a little bit. As always, I would love to know which was your favorite piece that I made this summer. I love hearing from you in the comments. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.